Well, good morning, good afternoon for some of you. My name is Tony Salas. I'm a little bit under the weather. If I sound a little rusky, or if I'll try not to cough, I'm overloading on cough drops and stuff. And we are here 2025. It's a little late in the season. We're covering pretty much what's happening. Yesterday, I did a Lucas webinar talking about the updates in vehicles, a little bit of training there. But one of the things we're going to talk about is what's going on lately in the shops. One of the things that I covered yesterday, that I'll talk about again today, or continue talking about today, is what is going on with the shop. So, as you know, lately, since I haven't done much training here in Las Vegas, I've been pretty much traveling to different locations and going to training at shops. So that's been interesting. And it also helps keep my skills up to speed for the simple reason that I actually am diagnosing trucks with them. So therefore, that's pretty cool. But one of the things we'll talk about, is that let me get this slide moving, is like when things don't make sense, right? What are we going to do when things don't make sense? So therefore, oops, I forgot to update to 25. It's 25, not 24. What is new? Again, what to do when all else fails. That's what we're going to talk about today is what to do when all else fails. And what is it that you've done everything by the manual, and Lord knows, as an instructor and trying to help out guys and giving my phone number out, I get the weird ones. I mean, I get the ones that, Jesus, I mean, it doesn't make sense, some of the things they do, but what do we do when everything's off? So we'll talk at length about that, and we'll also give you an update. So therefore, we'll definitely talk about that. It is my hope that you have updated or continue to update yourself. And one thing we did discuss at this conference I just did on Saturday, this past Saturday, was that, what are you doing to keep up to date? Because things are changing and we're seeing more items changed. And probably the thing that I discussed with even Mr. James Wilson earlier was the fact that I was talking about, you know, uh, in other words, the extensive need for understanding CAN communication. That's a big subject. And let me tell you, every location that I went to these last few months of January, I mean, excuse me, of October, November, December of a 24, was that, there was a lot of CAN issues we had to address. So they had no clue. And fortunately, I was there to do the training, and we actually did diagnosis on these CAN networks. So I try to simplify it as much as possible, which I'll cover a little bit. But please note that is a big deal. You need to understand that, you need to, again, what's the word I'm looking for? Get up to date on this training, get up to date on this training. So therefore, know how to diagnose a network system. In other words, understand CAN communication. So, I can't say enough about that. So there you go. So with that said, we'll talk more about that. We have a guest today. We have Kelly Bales, and she's going to be talking about, and I gave you co-host abilities, Miss Kelly. So if you want to put your PowerPoint up there, you want to do your talks, and you want to show your pretty face, you're welcome to.
Thank you,
But
Tony. Actually, Jeff Del Rosa is here as well. He's the founder of ProMAXX Tools as well as the engineer. And he wanted to speak a little bit about ProMAXX, if that's okay.
by all means, it's your show. But like I said, if you want to go ahead and put your
Yeah,
PowerPoint up there,
yep.
and if you want to show your video, that's great. And guys, you're welcome to ask questions about the ProMAXX tools. I actually bumped into Kelly at the SEMA Apex show, and we actually had a good time talking about. And I gave her a hard time about their tooling, but in all, their tooling is very good. So let's go ahead and give her. Like I said, were you going to share a PowerPoint, Kelly, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, Jeff Del Rosa is here and he's going to present that.
Hi, Tony. It's Jeff here.
Hello, sir.
And I'm not nowhere near as good looking as Kelly for sure. So, but I
Nobody's
do
good looking as her. So
exactly.
let me give you the co-host abilities. So you can do that. I need to look you
Okay.
up here. My apologies. I thought it was
No worries. No worries.
uh,
I'm just going to go through for your listeners that are on the webinar today. I'm just going to go through a couple of things about drill bits, the technology, what makes them, just to give you some tips when you're particularly when you're drilling into some of the stuff you guys do in diesel trucks or cars or engines. Obviously, the tooling required is much more needs to be more robust, and I'll go through and explain a couple of things that um, is necessary to take a look. So,
Okay, I gave you co-host ability, so you're on. So if
okay,
you want to put your PowerPoint up there,
sure.
and
Apps. Let me see.
I'll
No,
stop my share. So therefore, you're up there.
okay. Whiteboard.
Just click on that share and just find your
Existing.
PowerPoint.
Okay. Oh, yeah, find it in a second. Whereabouts is it? I don't know. Is it up in the top? View, share. Oh, sorry, Tony. Where's it?
No, no. You'll see a
Uh,
share button on the top
oh yeah, there
or
it
on the
is. Okay,
bottom.
got
It
it.
could go
Okay,
on the
got it.
top or bottom.
Yep, got it.
And you'll
Okay,
see, you'll look for your PowerPoint to play.
that's it. Sure. Okay. Just let me know if everybody sees that.
There we go.
Okay, good. All right. You're all familiar with drill bits. Obviously, you use them every day. You've been using them for a long time. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of things to help at least understand what drill bits and how that makes a difference, what they're made of, etc. I'm just going to go through this real quickly and what kind of tolerances that you want to be aware of. Obviously, when we a long time ago, when we were young men, young girls, we had, our father usually or somebody would show us how to drill, drill a hole in a 2x4 or some piece of plywood or whatever. Obviously, things have changed a lot since then. But so let's talk a little bit about technology. And if this is redundant, by all means, just raise your flag and tell me to move on. I'd be happy to do that. But what I want to talk about from an engineering perspective, some of the key critical components of a drill bit. And you're all familiar with this, the cutting edges, the flank, the chisel, as I'm sure. But I want to touch on a couple real things why I offered this slide. There's two things on here that's important: the web thickness and the relief of the drill bit. And we're going to talk about that in a second. The helix angle is not as important, although it is only to clear the debris you're drilling. And you'll see that variance based upon the type of drill and the cutting edge. But really the two things I want to focus on is the web thickness and the relief. Why are those important? Oftentimes drill bits snap, right? We've always been in a situation we're drilling a hole out, we're drilling a critical place, and lo and behold, we snap a drill bit. The web thickness is what's determined the durability of the bit and its ability to cut, as well as the ability to restrain from being breaking. So you've got to keep in mind that. Go down to the next slide. Oh, come on, babe. There you go. This is what I want to show you real quick. This is kind of the anatomy of this drill bit. But I want to focus on this one. I talked about web thickness, which is right here. The cutting angle, we call it the chisel angle, why that's important. The land width, those are important. But the thing we want to keep an eye on is when you're buying drill bits, there's a huge differences of buying drill bits and what you can buy. You can buy a carbide drill for $15. You can buy a carbide drill for the same size for $50. What makes a difference? Well, these are the kind of characteristics that make a big difference. The big deal here is your point angle. The on 118, 135 are typical drill bits, and you got to keep this in mind. The 118 is very, very aggressive. The 135 is going to drill slower. And why would that be important? Well, when you're drilling larger sizes, the larger the drill bit angle, the outer corner diameter, and that angle, the quicker it's going to drill. Larger drill bits, when they go in, they bite, they go in fast. But the problem with that is you're using so much energy to drill, there's a high propensity for it to break. So if you're drilling in a sensitive area, you want to look at a lower 118 type, 135 is okay, but you want to be careful of the pressure and amount of speed you use because you don't want to suck yourself in and you don't want to break the drill bits. That's a critical point. Go down to the next slide. The other thing I want to talk about is rake. The rake, and I'll spend some time right here on this. This is the edge of the cutting edge of your drill bit, okay? And you can see this one is very, very sharp. This one is got some deformation in it. Why is that a big deal? This is a bit down here that is machined. This is a bit like ours is ground. The points are ground. There's a big difference. When you use a diamond grinder, you all know that diamond grinders can actually put grooves in a bit, but a fine stone grinder does a really, really nice job and does a polish grind. Why is that important? Because a drill bit with a rake that's been ground and polished will cut faster, it'll last longer, and you'll get more precision holes when you drill. This is another point I want to share with you guys. You've all heard the term run out. Let me get rid of this thing here. There. Run out the critical thing about drill bits is the diameter, plus or minus. Okay. Most drill bits consumer grade standard is plus or minus 3,000. So that means it could go as much as 6 thousandths out of tolerance. So if you're drilling a 125 hole, it could be 130, add 12,000, add 6,000 to it, could be 131, or it could be undersized. That's important. Our drill bits are 0.000 plus and minus 0.001. So if you're going to drill a 125 hole, it's either going to be 125 or 124. It's not going to be 128, 132, 126, 124. It's going to be dead perfect tolerance. The other thing you got to keep in mind is what they call run out. And this is an example. It's obviously amplified example, but the run out is how much wobble or how that bit deviates at the very end. Most bits will deviate 5 to 6 thousandths. So that means if you got a drill bit that's plus or minus 3 thousandths, and stay with me for a second, and I got run out that's 6 thousandths, that means I could be off as much as 10 to 12 to 15 thousandths, adding those two up. So my bit is wobbling, but at the same time, my bit is off center. So it's off center by 6 thousandths. It's wobbling another 6. So I could be off as much as 12 thousandths on the diameter. So you can see on the right-hand side, I have this little video. And if you look at this closely, you can see the bit right here, the run out. You can see the variances. Now, that variance is smaller here, but when it gets down to the point, it's actually greater. So another factor that affects this is the length of the drill bit. If this drill bit's a 1/2 inch long, run out's not going to bother me that much. But if that drill bit is 3 inches long, well, run out is amplified at the tip. It could be as much as a 32nd to a 16th off. Our drill bits are 0.0001, 1/10,000ths of an inch in tolerance in run out. A real big thing to keep in mind. And that shows this right here. So in terms of technology, you always want to use a split point. Ours are all split point, not a standard grade. The consumer grades are different. You buy them at Home Depot, home centers. And a lot of your tool truck drillers, dealers will provide consumer grade, a little step up. They'll provide split point. But however, this is a machine shop grade. What makes the difference is the web's very thin, so it cuts fast. It clears itself. The rake is such at 135 degrees. The flank is such at 57 degrees, so it clears itself. It cools itself. The flutes are polished, so the chips will clear faster and they're smooth versus other bits that have a rigid or a corrugated or a rough surface. They don't clear as fast. So let me stop right there. I went through this really, really fast. To give you an idea, obviously my job is not to pitch ProMAXX as much as to show you basically what the differences are, good bits and bits that are okay, but based on your application. If you're going to drill a hole in a cylinder head, if you're going to drill out a bad remnant that broke off in a cylinder head, whether it's an exhaust manifold or it's a broken hole down bolt in a Duramax or a Power Stroke or a Cummins, then you want accuracy. You're going to drill a hole into a cylinder head with a hole that's already tapped, you want accuracy. And plus or minus, plus nothing, minus thousandths is important. So if there's no questions, let me just roll on. Oh, by the way, we have the same bits in a different category. These are our, what we call our PSSCs. They're threaded. What's nice about these is it can adapt to a threaded drill bit or a threaded drill. There's a lot of drill bits out there, a lot of drills out there that will accept a 1/4-28 drill. What I love about these is it gets you access to places you wouldn't normally get to. You can see the size of this bit, very, very small, all the way up to the larger one. These are our common sizes, 125, 1/8, and 3/16 or 1765 for 266. We also have this little countersink which allows you to chamfer and clean out a freshly tapped hole or a chase hole. And then we have an adapter that allows you to take any of these drill bits and stick into a 3/8 drill, standard 3/8 drill. It's threaded on one end, flat on the other end. But the difference here is this, gentlemen. When you look at our difference between a drill chuck and a power drive, it's much, much smaller. So it's tight areas, you can use it to drill in. Areas like EGR, we have one of our #1 kits is getting out the broken bolts on an EGR on a 6.7 Power Stroke. This particular one does both. It does not only EGR, but it has a broken hold down. If you break a fuel injector bolt on a 6.7 Power Stroke, guess what? You don't have to pull the head, you don't have to pull the cab. You can fix it right on the truck. Something new that we came out with just quickly is what we call the Robbie tool. Now, if you're doing a lot of these repairs, you'll notice that when you pull the injector out, you'll notice if you blew this little seat up, that's the seat in the cylinder head, you'll notice pits. Well, the pits are in there because of the high temperature and the carbon particulates that actually push themselves up underneath that seal and burn holes or build pits like craters in the cylinder head. And it looks like this. Looks like that in the right-hand side. Of course, a lot of coke here. What this is designed to do is it drops in your cylinder head. And the big deal here, if you don't refinish this cylinder head, you're going to continue to have the customer have blow by. That blow by loses performance. It allows the O-ring to get heated and temperature and frozen because it's going to get baked. What this does within 15 seconds, gentlemen, this will allow you to refinish that. It only takes 5 thousandths off, and it removes all the coke and carbon, brings it out to brand new, allows it to reseal. So this is a really nice device. If you're a resale shop, this is a retail service operation you can sell. If you're independent, you're doing a fleet, obviously you want to maintain optimum performance. This is brand news too. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but what we call ISS injector seal puller. There's a little seal, copper seal down underneath the injector. You guys are familiar with it. It's on both Duramax. It's on basically everything, including Dodge Fiat 3-liter 4-cylinder diesel engine, commonly in the Ram and the vans. What this does is secure that seal so you can pull it out without dropping into the valve cover. You know, the valve cover is open on a 6.7. You can lose it, spend 3 hours pulling off the valve cover just to pull that little copper seal. This protects you from doing that. Then lastly, we have a brand new, this is something really, really cool. We now have an air hammer powered. We have air hammer assisted injector pullers. You can find those on our website. We now just introduced what we call air hammer powered. What this does allows you to, for number 7 and 8 on the passenger side and 3 and 4 on the driver's side, you can reach up underneath the wheel well with our long 22-inch punch and our new Airstrike air hammer bi-directional and punch it out. These are good for difficult ones or stuck ones. You've all had stuck fuel injectors. You've all probably had to pull a cylinder head and drop it on a bench, flip it upside down and punch it out. You don't have to do that any longer. Here you have our bi-directional air hammer. We have a special adapter that goes right up underneath the backside of it. You put an aluminum plug in the front that drives the energy to the back, and it becomes a puller, and a vibration with a pull power will rip the injector out. And you can see this here, how it's done in application on a 6.7. So last thing I'm going to show you guys, you can hear that, right? Can you hear that, Tony?
Yeah.
Okay. Watch this.
Oh, the sound went away.
There we go. Pull it free. And that doesn't take long. It only this one took about 15 seconds. So if you've got a stuck fuel injector, we've got several options on our website to help you out. And then lastly, by the way, Tony, we're giving you and your guests some opportunity here. We're giving Powertrain 15. That's a 15% discount on anything you want on the ProMAXX website. So
Thank you.
appreciate that. Appreciate the time, Tony, you allowed me today and to introduce some of the stuff we have, talk a little bit about drill bit technology and what the do's and don'ts, but more importantly, reward your audience for some discounts if they want anything that I've showed today.
Yeah, one of the things that Kelly had mentioned to me is the speed of the drill, what we turn it at.
Yeah, it's a good question. Typically, our drill bits love 500 is optimum, 900 is max. And I realize that when you're doing a drill freehand, it's, you can't put a tachometer up there. There is tachometers available that you can measure, but you know what? You'll get a feel for it. The best thing I advise is that use a pressure relief valve. There's a lot of them available out there. We sell them. They're $5-6. You get them at Harbor Freight. Some of the Snap-on guys, the mobile tool guys, Matco, Cornwell, Mac, they all carry them. But there's usually a min-max on it, Tony. And Max is going to spend, if your drill bit's going to, your drills turn at 2,800 RPM, half that's going to be 1,400. Roughly half of that's going to be about 700. You'll be right in about the ballpark. Okay.
Okay.
The big deal on our drill bits, and this is what you want to keep in mind, all are machine shop grade. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, the difference between machine shop grade and consumer grade or even jobber grade is the tolerances on the outside diameter, the tolerances on the run out. Machine shop grade are for precision, and all of our bits are machine shop grade. When you're using a machine shop grade, you're used to being in a mill or lathe. When you're using freehand, you've got to replicate the application of a mill or a lathe. How do I do that? The way you can do that is bump your drill on and off 3 or 4 times. It allows your cutting edge to bite in, stop it from drifting off center or walking off center, creates a divot for the mage cutter edge to bite in and cut up to Rockwell 55. So they're very, very capable, twice the capability of any other drill bit in the market, made right here in the USA.
Very good. If anybody had any questions, go ahead and post them. But before I do that, apart from the PowerStroke 6.7, do you guys have any other products for the other light duty trucks, diesel
Yeah,
trucks?
good question, Tony. We have DuraMAXX, we have exhaust manifold repair kits, we have the turbo, the turbo pedestal underneath the turbo or the exhaust system bolts into. Those break, those bolts break. The exhaust system bolts break. We have fuel injector pullers for the DuraMAXX, and what you saw today is available in DuraMAXX and Dodge Fiat. We have the Robbie, which is a seat cleaner, a repair kit that's coming for DuraMAXX. We carry all the different injectors for the different heads, whether it's L5P or whatever one you want, LML, LMM, all of those, we have them all. So you can get those on our website, promaxtool.com.
All right, very good.
And call Kelly. She's expert at this stuff. Give her a call and call ProMAXX Tools. She can help you out. And
I don't know. I'm scared to ask her. She'd shoot me up because I was giving her a hard time about those drill bits.
you know what? We get a lot of calls about them, Tony. And drill bits are everybody has their favorite. But what you got to mind is it really comes down to there's so many variables. It comes down to how stable the user is, how good the drill is. Drills have inherently a run out because of the bearings. Some drills are made with bushings. Some drills were made with bearings. Obviously, bearings are like replicate and end mill. They're going to be much more accurate. So if you're using a lot of different drills, some of the core lists use bushings, not bearings. Some of your air drills use bearings. They're going to be more accurate. And we always recommend an air drill because it's more forgiving. So if you get into something where you get a drill and you're drilling along, a coreless one is so much more torque, Tony, that's going to break the bit, whereas an air drill will stall. And we like that. And they're more accurate.
Very good. Mr. Lee Stevenson had posted a question about left-hand drill bits for stud removal.
Yeah.
Do you guys
Good question.
have sets like that?
Yes, we do. We do make those. We do sell them. But this is a deal I like about what I don't like about left-handed. Left-handed are typically used in exhaust manifold, and although that's been a pretty good technique, there's a high rate of propensity to fail and break a drill bit. And this is what I'm talking about. What happens is a left-handed theory and works. The theory of using it or extracting a remnant thread is the left-handed drill bit will turn left-handed, and what it does, it will bite into to whatever you're drilling, and it will back it out. It will work. But the risk factor of having the bit grab and bite and break off is much higher. And I'll explain why. When you think about the dynamics, if I have a broken stud inside a cylinder head, and I'll use just my hand to show you this. When that stud breaks off, remember the head is the exhaust manifold is pulling on it, heat and cool cycles pulls, it's stretching that stud. But what it's trying to do also is twist it and bring it out. Well, when it actually breaks, it breaks the core of the stud first. Then, as it breaks it, it unwinds a thread, and those threads break, and they drive right into that soft aluminum head. When you go in with a left-handed drill bit, if it's above the surface, you don't have an issue. If it's below the surface, you have that burr that's dug in the head. If you go in and drill that left-handed drill bit's going to bite, grab it, but what it's going to do is it's going to drill against that burr that digs in the head. It's almost like a lock wash. It's going to snap the bit. We recommend right-handed standard bits for 2 reasons. A, you reduce the risk. B, the stud won't even have a chance to move. If you just tap it a couple of times, it'll drill right down too fast. You tack an extractor and pull it out. I'll comment one more thing, Tony, on the left-handed bits. The same phenomenon happens if you're using a left-handed extractor. The tapered left-hand extractors we don't recommend. The reason we don't recommend them, they're okay for a lot of different applications, but there's a problem with deformity. If I drill an 1/8 inch hole in a 8 millimeter diameter stud, I'm drilling out almost twice the amount of material of what's there. Well, the next thing I do is I drive a left-handed tapered extractor in there, and what it does is deforms the thread and pinches it in that stud. You're just being counterproductive. The other thing it does is trying to bring it out, and you got that burr I just talked about, is trying to bring it out and then drive it against that burr and locks it in, you snap an extractor. We recommend the ones that come with our kit. They're made in USA, they're splined, they're old school, they got a slip nut, but you drive that extractor in, and what it does is cut 5 grooves in that stud without deforming it. You drive your slip nut up tight against the head or the application, you turn it clockwise first, because that's going to release that burr from digging ahead. Then you can work it out. If it binds again when you try to go counterclockwise, this is a tip. Drive it all the way in, spray it with some fluid, back, run a tap through it to clean out any corrosion, then try it again. Bring it out. Normally it'll come right out. Good question.
No, thank you, Mr. Lee, for asking that question. Lee, did that help you out, buddy? Let us know. Any other questions for them?
Yeah,
Any
you
other
do.
issues you're having
do,
with
Lee.
broken
do,
bolts
Lee.
or anything?
Lisa, looks like I need some new extractors. Yeah. You know, guys, a lot of the younger techs don't even look at it and say, what's that? They never seen one of those things. Us old guys use these things long time ago.
Very good.
Tony, it's Matthew here. I know
Yeah.
Kelly and Jeff. I've worked with them both. I would
Matthew, nice
say,
to see you.
yeah, good to see you too, Kelly. So I have used their products, and I would say definitely in a lot of the things that they're just discussed have got those here as well. The latest on the 6.7. I was working with Jeff a little bit on, and I don't know if he can comment to this, the upper valve cover on the 6.7 as well as the upper valve cover on the ProMAXX. He's got tooling to get rid of the broken fastener down in the lower part of the valve cover on the 6.7. Works great. But where I've ran into some trouble, and he's been talking with me a little bit about this, is when the bolt oxidizes in the upper valve cover. If he could share a little bit where he's at with that and what we had discussed, some of that would be, I think, be good for the group because it is a problem. And one other thing I'd like to make a comment too. I was at the HDAW show last week and was talking with Bosch, and I see Carl's on here. I was talking with Carl and was also talking with Lydio from Bosch about why we have this injector erosion problem on some of the nozzles, which speaks to some of what Jeff is talking about in terms of the pitting. And basically that erosion that we're seeing, because I just had one in the past month or two from another customer that brought us injectors in. And that erosion on the nozzle, Bosch is saying, is definitely comes from too much cooled EGR, which is causing a chemical reaction such as a kind of like battery acid, they explained to me. And that's what's eating away the nozzle, which in truth could also cause some of the pitting, I guess, in the bottom of the aluminum, speaking back to why that can be a problem on the sealing washer. And that also, because of the erosion of the nozzle, is also going to leave that copper washer in the hole, which becomes another problem, as he mentioned about, because the valve cover on the 6.7 is not all the way down to the bottom. So back to that thing there, Jeff, if you don't mind, on
No, not at
Well,
all.
hold on. Let me slow you down for a minute. For those of you that don't understand, the 6.7 Power Stroke has had issues with, and we're seeing more of them. From my experience, I've seen it mostly on low speed, high load trucks. And that's the erosion of the pretty much of the actual nozzle tip to the point that it's actually leaking compression back into the common rail system. So therefore, that is aerating and causing pressure. So obviously the truck won't run, but it will take out the CP4 pump. I can tell you from experience, you know, a guy didn't see any rail pressure, so his instinct was to go ahead and replace the pump. Literally within a few crank times, he took out the pump. So again, just for you guys to understand, what Matthew's talking about is the erosion of the nozzles themselves. So I have my theory on that issue, but I guess my first question, most of all, and is that how many of you are seeing it on light duty super duties like F-250s? You know, I know F-350s, F-450, 550s, but I haven't seen it on the light duty ones. Have you guys seen them, the erosion on those light duties? Anybody will take any answers there.
Tony, that was the first where we actually seen it the very first time was on a 250.
Okay.
So it was. But outside of that, I can't speak to every case because some of them are injectors that are coming in our shop from other customers too.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Jeffrey, going back to what Matthew had told you. Sorry
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
interruption, gentlemen.
No, Matthew, good question. We actually have underway, we have a tool under development, and I'm feeling pretty strong about it. You'll probably see it before the end of the first quarter. It's for both DuraMax and for Power Stroke. And yes, what we're going to do is we have the ability to precisely drill into the stud that's sticking between the top of the valve cover and the bottom of the valve cover, and freezing that valve cover in place. You can't get it out. So it's coming along nicely. So I'll keep you guys up to date with that, and you'll see an email come out probably sometime early March, Matt, with that new tooling.
Good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, stop. You don't have to cut. You won't have to cut valve covers off anymore.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. And
All
any
right.
other questions for the lovely people here from ProMAXX? Whether Jeffrey or Kelly got any questions? Any other ones? If not, we will. Kelly, anything you'd like to add? Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey.
You're
If I can
welcome.
get that last slide from you, if you can
Yeah.
email it to me so I can put that discount on our website and our
Yep.
email, I would
Yep.
appreciate it. And I appreciate the
welcome.
discount that we can offer them. Thank you very much. It's
You're
very
welcome.
much appreciated for these guys.
Take advantage. It uppercase, all uppercase powertrain 1.5. So 15% off you get, and that's a big, big discount. I'm telling you guys, not to promote or pitch, but I will. We never get 15% off. You know, you get 10% off. You're a veteran for sure. We honor your veterans and certainly appreciate your service. But this is an extra 5%. So 15 off a $500 tool is real nice money. So yeah, it's powertrain 15, all uppercase, and it's available for you guys.
Thank
So if you
you
want something,
very
go ahead and
much.
grab it because it's not going to last long. We're going to keep it up there too long.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
I
Appreciate
appreciate you
your
having
time.
you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. And Kelly, anything else you'd like to add, or we're good?
I think we're good, Tony. Thanks for asking.
Eek.
Jeff did a wonderful job, covering everything that I wanted to talk about.
Well, we appreciate you. Maybe we'll have you in one of our future roundtables again on any updates you might have. You're welcome to join us. We try to do this monthly, and we'll let you know. We'll keep you on our email blast list too, as well. So
Great.
That'd be
Thanks,
great.
guys. Thanks, guys.
thank you. All right, we're gonna switch gears here, going back to where I was. We got some issues to talk about. Those of you still stayed on. I got a few guys that actually checked off. I don't know why, but in this case, one things I want to talk about. I've been getting a few phone calls. The last two interesting ones is my friend out there in Pahrump, Nevada. In other words, we call it over the hump in Pahrump out there and here past Las Vegas, because Las Vegas sits in the valley, over the hump, over the hill. There's a community called Pahrump. And he was actually telling me, let's see what you guys can figure out here. He actually had an LLY DuraMax, I believe it was an 05, but it was pressurizing the cooling system big time, which diagnosis led to head gaskets. Obviously, you're pressurizing, he checked everything else, and yes, the EGR cooler was covered as well. So I don't want to hear that one. But head gaskets and everything that's involved in checking heads, machining heads, everything was done correctly. He does very good work. And the problem is when he assembled it all, he actually called me, but then he figured it out from a blog. And he said upon startup, within minutes, it pressurizes the cooling system again, as if the truck was not repaired. We're taking any inputs. What do we think here? Anybody? No, I'm not going to give you the answer right away. You guys need to tell me something. Shit, that's why it's called a roundtable. Jesus. There you go.
Tony, Matthew here. I don't know if this is possible, but we have seen it twice on the LLY where there's actually a pinhole that develops in the cylinder head. We've seen it twice now on number one cylinder in the injector sleeve, or what would be the sleeve area. Obviously, it does not have a sleeve in the LLY and above, but I don't know if by chance there was a little crack in that area that was somehow got air in it, or compression getting up through that little pinhole into the water jacket some way or not. On the two we've seen here, we've actually, one of them actually had an external leak. It was actually just leaking coolant, looked like out around the injector. The second one we had here hadn't got that far, but the machine shop found it in the hole. So I'm not saying that's what you found here, but it's one.
Well,
one
that's a
thing
good input. I've never heard that one before, but that's something to keep in mind. But that
And
was
I've-
not the issue here, though.
Okay. I've talked to some other shops that said it has been a known problem on the LLYs to have some of that pinhole development in the injector's hole. But anyway, be curious what you did find.
Yeah, sorry, I had a cough. No, actually, that was. I'll give you a hint what he did that helped him understand what might be going on. He pressure tested the system. It holds pressure. Now, mind you, this is after assembly, after repair. But then he puts it in a vacuum and it doesn't hold vacuum. He checked everything he could imagine and he couldn't find where he was leaking because it hold pressure, but it wouldn't hold vacuum. Any other ideas? Okay, just gave you a hint. Actually, I saw this problem, in case you want to know. I saw this problem about, I don't know, 8-9 years ago. But I'm taking the guesses. Again, the secret is it doesn't hold vacuum there. So it holds pressure, and that needle will stare at you steady as can be. Those of you that took my initial ProMAXX classes when I first started teaching LB7 over 20-some years ago, 30-some years ago, you probably know this one. But in this case, what it was, I might as well throw it to save on time because I'm watching the clock. It was actually the water pump. The water pump was the cause. And in this case, it was the seals. Obviously, that was expanding on pressure, but it would actually contract under suction. So who would have thought it was the water pump? So in all essence, the actual issue was the water pump itself. There
So
you
Tony,
go.
explain to me how you're getting pressure from the water pump. I'm not sure if I fully follow
Because
that.
it's pulling in the actual coolant. I mean, excuse me, it's pulling in air, which in turn it pressurizes air on the outlet. So as much as it pushes outward, it pushes air with it along with the coolant.
I got you. Okay.
And
Wow.
if we, like I said, like I remember before, this has been an issue, with I saw it with the LB7s years ago. So, but it wasn't a big issue, but it was something we diagnosed. So fortunately, he got it figured out. He did a good job. So it was the water pump. So the sadness is that, I felt, he was kind of feeling bad for the simple fact that, did it really need the head gaskets? Yikes. Oh, tough position to be in. All right, another one. This is a recent one from Midwest. He just emailed me on this. 2014 Chevy Express 66 LGH. We got a NOx issue, obviously. The DEF injector in the pump has been replaced, and I believe he's here with us. He's joining us. So if you want to turn your mic on, dude, you can help us with this.
Yeah, I'm here,
NOx.
Tom.
Okay, yeah, it's Gary. NOx, he's actually joining us. The NOx levels are very high. Okay, in this case, we got high NOx levels on NOx sensor 2. And if I'm incorrect about something, Gary, correct me, okay? But he checked the DEF volume and spray, and he has over 80 milliliters, right? And the spec is 30 milliliters. So this morning, after declogging myself from this cold, I decided to go look up the service information and look it up. I started laughing. I'm like, well, son of a gun. As I looked here at the genuine, and this is genuine GM information for Identifix, I look here on that test for, again, the emission reduction fluid injector. In other words, the quantity. It says there, if 30 milliliters or less, in other words, hold on a second, let me go up here. Number 8, command the reductant in quantity test on with a scan tool. The injector should flow greater than 30 milliliters. He's definitely flowing greater than 30. He's getting 80. Sorry. So with that said, it said disconnect the fluid injector from the supply line, position the fluid injector lines towards the graduated cylinder, command it with the test on with the scan tool. It should be greater than 30. So in this case, this is if you have less than 30 milliliters. But if 30 milliliters or less, test the injector and supply line for damage or restrictions. If greater than 30 milliliters, replace the emission reductant fluid injector. Now, this is where it gets funny. If greater than 30 milliliters, all okay. Anybody want to throw their 2 cents worth on that interpretation of that flow there?
Tony Matthew here again. I do know this is obviously we're working with a GM, but I recall from recently discussing it with another shop about a Ford application on one of our previous on the diesel TG forum. There was someone who had posted about having a problem with NOx reduction on the Ford, and he found in their particular case the spec on Ford was like I think 40 some to 50 some, and he was near that normally speaking, but when he warmed the engine up, it would get up close to 75 or 80, which was out of the specification. And basically, he ended up replacing the injector, and the NOx then eventually trailed where it should be because I guess we were getting too much, basically having where too much ammonia, I guess. So
Exactly. And as we discussed before, like I told Gary, is that, the NOx sensor 2 cannot differentiate between the ammonia and NOx. So therefore, it's going to show high NOx. Now, Gary, kick in here a little bit. The issue you're having is when we see that injector come on, what happens to your NOx on NOx sensor 2?
Oh, it skyrockets. I mean, it goes from around 80 parts per million to over 300.
Because everything here leads. So I guess my next question is, Gary, you did check the flow. We have flow here. I'm not even going to tell you to go ahead and disconnect the injector and check the flow there because you got flow. You got over 80 milliliters just by the injector alone. So you just put in an injector, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so let's help them out here. We got already 80 milliliters. We're beyond spec, but the thing is, it says if greater than 30 milliliters. That's why I'm looking at this going, what the hell? It's like if 30 milliliters or less, test the reductant injector and supply line. But we don't have that problem. We're greater. So if greater than 30 mils, replace the emission reductant fluid injector. Now he's replaced it. Now this is an OE, right, Gary?
Yeah, it's a Delco unit.
So any suggestions, people? Nobody has an answer. Really, guys? Not one? Yes? Helpful?
So did he, Tony Matthew again? Did he go in and do any resets then after replacing the injector on the SCR
Ooh,
system?
I didn't ask him that, Mr. Gary.
I did not. I saw that there was not like a particular reset for the DEF injector.
There is one, I believe, ain't it?
There is.
Actually, there's one for emission. I forget the name of it, how it's titled with GM, but
So yeah, it's like a whole
reset.
emissions.
I would reset all the NOx related ones, and if there's one for the injector, but I don't remember if there's one on an LGH or not. So
Definitely, I would for sure too, because it may be it's going off its old information yet and just telling it to go keep dumping it in.
correct. And GMs
Yeah,
are
like maybe
notorious for that. And GMs are notorious for that.
Yeah, so like the duty cycle's too high for the flow.
In other words, he has a learned adaptive value he's learning. So what we're trying to do is by you resetting it, you're telling him to go back to base programming.
Okay.
Tony, I have a stupid question.
Stupid questions don't exist here, sir.
How did this thing get to 80? Is it from what you and Matt are talking about? The adaptive learn have kept pushing and pushing and pushing it up
No.
that high?
No, let me correct you there for a second.
Okay.
One of the things you do is you take the injector off and you go ahead and put it in a graduated cylinder the way Gary did. And
Right.
what you're supposed to do is you go ahead and with the Scanto command, which we call the emission reductant fluid injector test.
Right.
And at that point, you're supposed to have minimum of 30 milliliters. He has 80.
On a brand new injector.
Correct. So therefore, what that means is that he's obviously probably injecting too much because, and Gary had this on, you can see when the injector's commanded on, you can see that the NOx levels go extremely high on NOx sensor 2, which is the one after the whole SCR assembly.
Yeah, correct.
Now, let's get one thing clear. The reason why it's going up, we know that for a fact, is that we know that DEF fluid turns into ammonia once injected, and it actually will fool NOx sensor 2. This is a big deal that I've been trying to teach over and over and over again. And it turns, again, the NOx sensor 2 cannot differentiate between ammonia and NOx. So in turn, it's going to indicate a high level of NOx. And that's what he has. So obviously he's injecting too much DEF fluid. So Since you already put an injector in, because the first answer we would all say is that you need an injector. Which, by the way, what was your pressure on that scan tool, sir? Were you able to read the depth pressure?
It was like 72, I believe.
Oh, you're in spec then. So that's in spec. So yeah, this is what I would do. I would agree with Matthew 100%, is that I would go ahead and reset every damn on special functions on that Tech 2. You want to reset every Knox. And if there's one for the SCR reductant, I forget if there is or not, but you may want to reset that too and get back to us on that. If not, like Matthew knows I'll be answering, is that I would go ahead and check to see if there's an update reflash on this. So may want to do that, because it seems like it's programming that's doing it, not the physical injector. You got the pressure there, you got the excess volume there, so therefore why is you inject too much there? That duty cycle it's running is too big. So in this case, let's reset first. If resets does not fix the problem, then I would be updating or reflashing that program there.
Okay.
Because that's kind of where I was going, Tony, is where is the PCM getting its information to send 80 milliliters on the test? You think it would be some kind of a base programming, but maybe I'm all screwed up.
No, you're not, because the NOx sensor is screaming high NOx. So in turn, the ECM is going to bombard it with more DEF fluid.
Bring me more. Okay.
Bring me more. Yeah, exactly.
Got
That's
it.
why she's probably just pouring out a crap load of fuel. What's kind of misleading is the fact that one thing is to test it at a fixed duty cycle that it's supposed to do when you run that test on a scan tool. And another thing is how it acts when it's on the vehicle. In other words, as the vehicle's running.
Right.
That's why I think we got a PCM issue going on, or a program issue going on.
Got it.
And one thing I've learned about GMs working through them through the years is that they can be a little fussy, where excuse me, where the computer will lock into a given action or a duty cycle, if you will. Excuse me. So there you go. Any
Tony,
other
one other question I have, and I'm sure you already asked Gary about this, but what is his baseline NOx 1 level? I know we've talked about this on this roundtable before, where that should not be what at idle exceeding 300. I think is what you said is kind of a baseline on NOx 1.
Yeah, NOx
I
1
guess-
is what I use. Yeah. Have you looked
So-
at NOx 1, Gary?
Yeah, so NOx 1 typically at idle, the lowest I've seen is about 60 and the highest was about 120.
Okay.
That's still within spec.
Yep. The other comment I'll make, Tony, is you mentioned about the reflashing part. If these relearns don't do it for him, I think we've also ran into before. You've mentioned about this, I guess. Even if it is the latest calibration, you've had some scenarios where we've had to go in and still reload that calibration. Particularly, I think a lot of times if the DEF won't come out of won't come out of the warning levels and whatnot, which that's not what he's up against now. But I guess I'm just saying that if in the event he goes in there and finds out that it is up to the latest software, not to discount that he still may have to go to that thing if the relearns don't work. If that's making sense. What I'm trying to say is even if it's the latest calibration, there could be a possibility if things that the computer's just out of whack that still could need to go ahead and update it, even though it's already at the latest. We typically don't do that, but there's rare scenarios is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and actually I had that once with a Kodiak. I don't remember which Duramax it had in it, but same thing. It was having an intermittent no crank concern with the current calibration. I reprogrammed it with the same calibration, and that actually fixed the issue.
Oh, so you've seen that issue too. So
Yeah.
Well, hopefully I gave you something to go by, Gary. And
No,
you can
definitely.
use that. All righty. Very good. Very good. Very good. All right. Switching gears. Before I get into that one, I forgot to make a slide on it. Matthew, this will come back to you. Remember our good friend out in Pahrump that actually had that 7.3? You lent him the computer?
Yes, I do.
Well, he called me last week and I got to make time. I'm sick right now, so I can't go. But turns out is he bought a new ECM and he's had
Yes.
it tested and he sent it to another vendor. And in other words, he's validated that ECM. The problem is we still got the same problem.
Oh,
You know, I guess the ECM you sent him actually was tuned, correct? Because he said it was tuned.
that may be the case.
Because when he put it on, he said it just overfueled like crazy. In other words, she was smoking.
Hmm.
So here we go, gentlemen. The issue is, and Matthew, you can stay on to kick in your 2 cents worth, and everybody else, is that it's a manual 7.3 2001 model, I believe. And in this case, the problem is that it just has no boost, no umph, no nothing. Injectors have been replaced. He's checked everything. He says he's done everything. Obviously, the two sensors I go after is the chem and the map sensor, you know, and he says those are fine. He's checked them out thoroughly. So in this case, obviously, when I address a problem and when I talk about it, and those of you that email me stuff or text me stuff, let's get one thing clear. When you send me a problem like this one, please note I got to cover what you may or may not have covered. And in this case, I last year a guy pissed me off. Something got awful when I told him that he had this really weird 6.7 problem on a power stroke, and I told him to check powers and grounds, which when I go to shops, I see that all the time. I go, okay, let's check power and grounds. And I take opportunity to teach the guys how to check powers and grounds and back probe and so on. And guess what? We find, I would say that 80% of those problems are found by doing a back probe test on the ECM. So I don't take it lightly and I don't try to sound like a broken record about repeating this over and over and over again, if you guys know what a record is. But anyways, the point is, you know, I start off with powers and grounds. So therefore, when I get there, one of the things I'm going to check, and even though I'm going to hate it because you all know the location of that ECM is, how is the power and grounds going to the computer? So can we agree that when we see erratic issues, in other words, things that just don't make sense, is power and ground going to the computer something essential to check? Yes or no? Anybody?
Of course.
So I see that's a lot of guys chatting in the window. You guys can turn your mics on if you want, but anyways, it should be. Even Carl agrees. Yeah, Carl, it should be. And he says one of the first things you ought to do. So therefore, I'm going to check that because have I seen erratic things with a 7.3? Yes. Let me give you the most erratic thing I ever saw was it had I had one 7.3, which was an 0102, and it actually had an intermittent misfire. And what I mean by intermittent misfire is that it actually was number one cylinder would actually misfire. You would have a dead hole, right? Then you shut the truck off, shut it back on. Number 8 is now dead, right? Shut the truck off, shut the truck back on. It was weird, man. I mean, I don't know how to explain this. It's like number 2. In other words, it was changing. It's like the computer got moodier with the IDM, and it actually just shut down intermittently stuff. You know, in other words, not stuff, but the injectors. So it was very isolated. So the first thing I decided to do was go after power. And the thing is, when a computer's acting stupid, something's making it act stupid. Like I said, the powers and grounds are never ending story. The problem after that point of identifying that I need to check power and grounds is that guys just don't know how to back probe. You know, they don't know how to identify on a pin chart what they're looking for. So therefore, you need to do the same thing too. So therefore, that's what I'm going to go after at first. But then, we're going to question again those injectors because he did put injectors in that are aftermarket, but I've seen aftermarket injectors do issues too as well. Now, obviously, if I have lack of power, we also tend to check as well the exhaust, make sure it's not restricted and don't have any issues with that too as well. So there you go. So very important to keep in mind. So the next thing I just wanted to cover here as the clock is ticking for some of you is, again, you guys got to get, like I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, is you guys got to get up to speed on the networks, right? There's a great video that I like to show in class where I forget the name, Fred Macklow, and he has a F350. And in this case, he's diagnosing an F350. Please note, in the service manual, there are charts you can reference to start learning on how to check. And here is one that I've shown before on, diagnosing communication problems. So the question always begs, and until the day when I go visit shops, just recently, I will ask them, what do you do when a computer doesn't communicate, right? Or when you have issues with things don't work. So the reason why this is important, that's why I was talking to Jim Wilson about this, is, you are now going to get trucks where the truck will not crank, it won't start, right? No crank, no start, and it won't communicate sometimes. What are you going to do at this point, right? And if you're lucky that it does communicate, then at that point, you may have U codes. So you need to address those U codes. In other words, can the issue be? The latest one that I just recently fixed was the truck was not intermittently would start. In other words, sometimes it would crank, sometimes it wouldn't crank, and it had a bunch of U codes too as well. And one thing I talked to another tech, well, I was actually, talking to another tech, in other words, on the phone. He just said, "Hey, Tony, don't even waste your time." He goes, "Just go to the back of the tailgate, go underneath that tailgate. You'll see that, what is it, one or two connectors right there. Disconnect them and see if the truck now runs fine." And guess what? Start it up, run fine. Turns out that connector, and you could see the the corrosion, and again, the contamination of connector. Because let's face it, on today's trucks, today's connectors have a lot to be desired. I miss the old GM weather pack connectors that were very good and very good sealing. So that in turn was dropping one of the networks, whether it being can high or can low, and that was causing the issue, right? So in this case, what I guess I'm trying to encourage you is take time to start learning this. If you want some help, obviously we're going to be offering some training on this as a refresher. I did have a network course, but I just updated it on how we track down, the actual network itself. So a good example is, for those of you who've never given this thought, I've taught this before, even on my Lucas classes and some of the, what's the other company that sponsors me? Align Power too as well, is there's your start of your diagnostic link connector. And if you go down the middle, like I said before, we got two networks in one. So we notice we have resistors right there. Everybody talks about that terminating resistance. Well, I can measure resistance. Yes, you can. And again, we got 120, 120. And in this case, we can diagnose to see if there's conductivity, but it still does not tell you if you're shorted to ground. Let's get that clear. That's why you need a scope. So therefore, definitely the scope. And James, if I can bug you for a second, if you go on, turn on your microphone, is a scope essential in CAN diagnostics, my friend? Since he's an instructor too, I'll put James on there.
You've got to have the scope, because you're not going to be able to do it with a voltmeter. I have guys trying with a voltmeter all the time. The only time you can do that is key on, engine off. You can use a voltmeter, but after that, you've got to use a scope to get the pattern. And it don't have to be really anything fancy. The other day, I don't know if anybody heard of what's called the H scope. Works with Android.
No, I haven't heard that one. No, I haven't heard that one.
$100 scope, and it works great. And it does a good job. You don't have to have anything real fancy. You just have something to be portable. And that one works, because a lot of times you're climbing underneath something, and that peak goes a little hard to bring underneath all that stuff you're looking at. But yeah, you need a scope. Most of them will give this pattern correctly. The other thing is, Tony, when you're dividing this, I have one question for you. On the Cummins, they're not using where everything goes through the FCA or the communication module, where you can't really get into the network from there. Am I correct or not?
Hold on. Are you talking about the gateway?
Yeah, because the signal outside the gateway is not the same as inside the network. That's the other thing you got to keep in mind.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. But yeah, we definitely need to scope those and find out. Yeah. I haven't done a late model one for a while, but definitely do to get new ones. So
that's why I was asking.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit real quickly about Cummins as I come to a close. Yeah. But again, the moral of the story here is something we need to get on deck with, is that, again, we need to understand that the scope is going to be your buddy. So you need to see that basic can high and can low. Yes, you can check base voltage, but that's not good enough. You need to make sure it's communicating. So therefore, we need to understand. That's what we've been doing in a lot of our classes. And even when I do my in-shop training, we actually have had trucks that we had issues with, and also had to use the lab scope. And I showed an image yesterday, one of my training that I did in my Lucas class. But in this case, you need to get up to speed with that.
Tony, one of the guys mentioned the U scope. It's a great scope, but you only look at one channel. But hey, as long as one channel and you take it and they mirror each other, it's fine. It works.
Oh yeah, I don't have to have them both on one screen. I could do one at a time. Yeah. So we want to see what's going on. So, and the thing is, later on in a future webinar, I'm going to talk about the Ford. In other words, they have a complete article on how they're approaching with their gateway that they're using now, and in this case, how they're looking at this. So yeah, they want to see a base of 2.5 volts, but again, they have to monitor that communication, which you can only see, like I said, with a scope. So there's some good idea. So there's some people posting there, some chat about that too, that you can actually do that too. So whether the truck is modified or not modified, you still got CAN, guys. Need to make sure that. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
No problem.
All right. I had a slide on this, but somehow the slide disappeared. But the last thing I thought I'd talk about here real quickly is, as you know, Cummins on the RAM application has come up with an updated engine. The one thing I texted the guys here, and I don't know if Carl's still on, but apparently there is a new CP8 pump. So therefore, the new Cummins 6.7 for 2025 is a CP8 pump. That's all I know at this time. So if anybody knows anything about it, let me know. But I took a closer look at the picture of that engine, and that means I'm going to have to get my hands on it or go to dealership and go see one of those engines, see what it has there. But so therefore, they're not using that. I guess you can say that beefed up CP3. It actually is using some version of which they now call a CP8. So we'll get more information about that. But the other thing that was mentioned in the article that I read about that new Cummins is that it says glow plug system. And I'm like, wait, they went with glow plugs? So they didn't have any diagrams or anything. And the service information at this time does not show any of that updates. So stay tuned on that too. So as you know, they've been having the grid heater issues. But I will tell you something. On the last few shops I did in December, we actually did voltage drop tests going to the intake air heater. And guess what? It had about a 2-volt variance. So one thing that I found out is we had a relay issue. So in this case, what I'm trying to say is before you guys condemn that grid heater, you better do a voltage drop test going to that grid heater. So there you go.
Hey, Tony.
Yes, sir. Carl,
How
how you
you
doing,
doing?
buddy?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Nice to hear from you, sir.
Yeah, good to hear from you as well. I'm sorry I can't attend more often.
No, it's okay.
Got me traveling quite a bit lately. But,
Yeah, you do.
I know very little about the CPA, but I'll let everybody know what I do know about it.
Mm-hmm.
It looks very, very similar to a CP4. However, there are internal upgrades they've done to the pump for robustness. They have increased the size of the roller and the bolt that's in the roller that meets the cam. So it's much larger than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
There are splash oil lubrication techniques that have been installed that are used on a CP4i, which we don't see in this country. It's a different injector head. It's electronic injector head. We haven't had any applications in North America as of yet, but they are popular in Europe. So they use that technology in there as well. So we get a little better fuel lubrication on this pump now. We boosted the pressure up as well, being able to do that. We're capable of the 2500 bar. Let's see, what else do we got here? Yeah, so that's the first start of production is that the 2025 RAM that we're putting it in now. So yeah, so if that helps anybody, it's if you look at it, you may just say this looks like a CP4, but it is a CP8 now.
Any idea why the 8?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Just curious.
That was just number of the things. So you start out with low and go high. That's typical for Bosch.
Yeah.
And it's probably just the line of production changes. You know, like Jim said, just at this point they made adjustments to it, and they ended up saying this is our 8th version of it is where we ended up with. So yeah, I don't know what happened to 6 and 7. Honestly, I missed those, but they're on 8 now.
There's also a 9 for heavier
Really?
truck.
Yeah, 9's been out for quite a while now, which was actually a crazy thing because we heard about the 8. I never knew about the 8. We heard 9's been out for a long time, but then all of a sudden we have a CP8 now. I don't know if they've been working on this behind the scenes, which they probably have been, and had that 8 designated already before the 9 came out years ago. A good possibility. So, but anyways, we are on 8, and it's going to be the same indicator. If it's an 8.1, it's a 1 pumping plunger. If it's an 8.2, it's a 2 pumping plunger.
Well,
Carl, one question for you. Do you know if that has any of the anti-rotation pins like you talked about that Ford is using on the CP4?
Oh yeah, good call, Beth. I'm glad you asked that. Yes, it does. All the CP8s have that pin that's located in there. But I want to let you know something. If it gets contaminated, we have seen those pins fail. It just wipes the edge of the pin off and twists the roller. A lot of times it won't twist the roller in 90, but it will twist it maybe 5 or 6 degrees because it'll jam inside there against the bolt edge that's broken off. So either way, it's catastrophic.
If you guys want to look at a picture of that, it's go to autodiesel13.com. They got a picture of it right there.
One other question too, Carl, if you may or may not know this, but I know some of the aftermarket has been doing some retrofit work to the CP4 and in terms of how it's metering the inlet fuel going to the crankcase part versus feeding the pump portion. Do you know if that's been reworked at all on the CP8 versus what the CP4 was getting supply fuel from the way I was understanding from the crankcase back in feeding the plungers as opposed to splitting that?
Yeah, I am not 100% sure. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm just looking at some documentation now that I have, just reading through it. I haven't had a chance to really go over it. But I did want to just let you know that from the Bosch side, there is a CP8 pump and the little differences that I can see offhand. I'll have to read a little bit deeper into it, and I'll be glad to share what I can, maybe on next roundtable if I'm available to come on there, or even give you a little presentation on it if I can at that time.
We will work with your schedule, Carl. You just tell me when you're available. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, it's been
We'll
pretty
make
busy
Carl the
lately.
boss.
Well, I know you're just as busy as I am. I don't think our feet hit the ground long.
We'll try to make it happen. So
yeah, no worries.
All righty. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Carl. Those of you that don't know Carl, he's with Bosch, and he's a great instructor and does a good time once in a while. He contributes, and we appreciate that, especially being from Bosch. There you go. All righty. So that pretty much, I've gone a little bit over time, but it's been a good roundtable. Sorry, I'm sick. Sorry, I had a cough a few times. My apologies. But anybody like to add any last minute comments? Last minute comments? We're taking comments. All right. Since there's no last minute comments or anything, for those of you that sticked around, I'd like to thank you for attending, and we will see you next month. Yeah. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.